Imagine this. It's the mid-1500s. Deep in the Andes of modern-day Bolivia stands a mountain of silver so vast it would change the course of global history. By 1545, the Spanish Empire uncovered what would become the legendary Cerro Rico of Potosí, the rich mountain, and soon it was said to contain more wealth than most kingdoms could dream of. That silver didn't stay in the Andes. It flowed across oceans, through fleets and caravans, becoming the backbone of an early global economy. Coins minted from that ore, the famous piece of 8, became accepted from Europe all the way to Asia. But here's the twist. That windfall brought not only dominance, but risk. Over-reliance, inflation, debt. The same forces that toppled empires then are at work in our world today. In this video, I'm going to show you how that silver-driven empire from 500 years ago still matters for your money in 2025. Because when resource booms become global systems, they leave behind patterns. And those patterns can reshape your budget, your savings, your investments. So let's dive in. Let's start with how the windfall began. The silver, the mines, the trade routes, and then we'll connect the dots to your wallet. When the Spanish arrived in the Americas, they found silver. But what they discovered at Potosí was on a completely different scale. At one point, Potosí alone produced up to 60% of the world's silver. And it wasn't just the silver ore itself, it was the systems built around it. The Spanish introduced new metallurgy techniques, new mining methods, and they turned remote mountains into centers of extraction. One of the pivotal coins of that era was the Real de Ocho, better known as the Piece of 8. Minted from American silver, this coin became a global medium of exchange, accepted from Havana to Manila, from Antwerp to Asia. But the silver didn't travel alone. It moved along vast trade routes, fleets crossing the Atlantic, caravans crossing Panama, galleons crossing the Pacific. Other parts of the world were hooked into that flow. China had a voracious demand for silver, for example. Think of it as the first major resource-driven globalization. A private windfall turned into a global system. And that's our first pattern. Resource windfall global integration. With the silver windfall flowing out of the Americas, one of the most profound transformations of early modern finance began. Global integration. The famous silver mines of Potosí alone produced an estimated 60% of the world's silver in the latter half of the 1500s. That silver was minted into coins, used to buy goods, pay armies, settle trade. One coin, the Piece of 8, became accepted from Havana to Manila, from Antwerp to Asia. Spain used this silver to fuel its wars and dominance. But crucially, the silver didn't stay in Spain. It flowed out, to pay for imports, to settle debts, to finance the empire's obligations. When you send gold or silver into the system, the effects ripple outward. Trade routes spanned oceans. The fleets of Cadiz, the Manila galleons crossing the Pacific, caravans across land routes. European merchants, Asian markets, all became connected in what we might call a pre-modern version of the global economy. At its peak, Spain's dominance looked unassailable. The empire stretched from the Americas to Europe. The silver-driven economy gave Spain military and financial power. But here's the pattern. Dominance born of resource plus integration can breed dependence and fragility. When your system is built not on diversified strength, but on one major input, in this case silver, you become vulnerable. Every empire built on resource dominance and global integration faces its reckoning. And for Spain, that reckoning came in the form of inflation, mounting debt, and over-reliance. Let's begin with inflation. Historians call it the price revolution, a period spanning the late 15th to early 17th century when prices in Europe rose dramatically. Why? Because so much silver from the Americas entered Europe that the supply of money surged. In a system built on specie, this meant inflation. As one historian puts it, the massive influx of precious metals following the discovery of the New World had some effect on prices. At the same time, Spain was spending heavily. Wars, colonial administration, long supply lines, and the cost of empire all drained silver. As the treasury borrowed more, national debt climbed. Meanwhile, the mines began to yield less easily accessible ore. Extraction costs rose. This is the third stage in our pattern. Overextension rising out of dominance. When the system is reliant on a single resource and global integration, costs grow, competition intensifies, and early signaling of decline emerges. For Spain, the silver that had lifted it up was now part of its vulnerability. Wealth had been spent, debt contracted, inflation eroded purchasing power, and long-term productivity lagged. Now we turn to the fourth stage of our pattern: systemic risk, collapse, or transformation. Spain, once flush with silver and global influence, began to stumble. The signs were clear. Silver production in its American mines dropped significantly by the late 16th and early 17th centuries. At the same time, Spain's domestic economy became dependent on that silver-driven income. But that income was neither consistent nor endless. Adding to the stress, heavy military spending, long external supply chains, piracy, and other losses. Inflation, known in historical economics as the price revolution, roared across Spain and Europe as silver flooded in, increasing money supply and driving up prices. Meanwhile, Spain borrowed heavily on the expectation of future silver shipments, loans that often couldn't be repaid when shipments were delayed, lost, or depleted. As the empire's economic base shrank, trust in its currency, its institutions, its global dominance weakened. Merchants lost confidence. Trade shifted to other powers. The result? A gradual decline, not an overnight crash, but a systemic unraveling. Overdependence on one resource, overextension of power, inability to adapt, turned dominance into vulnerability. We've walked through the story: silver windfall, global dominance, over-reliance, systemic risk, decline. Now ask, what does this 500-year-old story in Spain have to do with you in 2025? Let's connect the dots. 1. Resource/advantage dependency. Just as Spain relied on American silver, many modern economies or investors rely on one big advantage. For example, a dominant currency, the US dollar, a booming industry, tech, or cheap global credit. When that advantage shifts, you feel it. 2. Global integration and vulnerability. Spain's silver trade linked continents, built complex systems, but also exposed Spain to global shocks, mining declines, piracy, competition. Today our finances are even more global. Supply chains, multinational flows, global reserves. That means global risks matter for your household. 3. Inflation, debt, and leverage. Spain's inflation and debt increase stemmed directly from the silver windfall and its mismanagement. Today we face high national debt, inflation pressures, and asset bubbles. Your savings, your retirement, your purchasing power are exposed. Ed. 4. Systemic shift and need for adaptation. Dominance ended for Spain because it couldn't adapt. For you, a rigid portfolio, overdependence on one asset or currency, ignoring new risk dynamics, these are structural threats. Here are your actionable STE. Yes. Diversify across assets, currencies, regions. Don't rely on one windfall or one dominant system. Monitor inflation and currency risk. Adjust your holdings to protect purchasing power, e.g., inflation-protected securities, commodities, foreign assets. Avoid over-leverage based on a single advantage, just like Spain borrowed heavily expecting silver to keep coming. Stay alert to global shifts. Systemic risks aren't just theory. When trade flows, reserves, currencies shift, your portfolio should sure. FT2. In short, the story of the Spanish silver boom isn't just history. It's a mirror. The same pattern played out in Spain is playing out in today's global finance. And your money is part of that system. If you found this video insightful, make sure you hit subscribe. Ring that bell to stay ahead of these historical patterns shaping your financial future. And don't forget to share it with someone curious about how money, history, and power always seem to move in cycles. What's the next windfall you're relying on, and is it built to last? Drop a comment and let's discuss. Thanks for watching.